What is going on, y'all? I'm KMBest. He's Lambie Series. Together, we are 8 Cubes. We talk about the 8 most important topics in Marvel Snap every week. We are going to start with the upcoming Season Pass card, Spider-Punk, a 3/3 with an inbuilt ability to move itself once. When this card moves, that is every time it moves, it steals 2 power from the strongest enemy card at the location that it moves to. Now, when I see this card, what I think of is Old Vulture. It's not going to be the exact same as Old Vulture, which was a 3/3 that scaled 6. This is, of course, a 3/3 that is effectively scaling 4, but distributing that power across locations rather than keeping it all on itself. But what it does have that Old Vulture doesn't have is the ability to move on its own. The current iteration of the big move deck, what I consider to be one of the best decks in the game, is a sort of Kraven the Hunter Juggernaut backup plan when you aren't massively human torching the crap out of people. I can see this card being quite good in that context. I can see it being a sort of surgical tool compared to Human Torch's nuclear bomb when you have payoff for a card like that. That is what I have hope for, because I don't really see Marvel Snap as being a world where you can just play a 3/7 that moves and be incredibly happy with it. But I do see the move deck as being a major component of this metagame and being quite powerful, and this being probably better than Dagger in it. What are your thoughts on that, Lambie?
Yeah, so this card, to be completely honest, I actually think this card is also pretty strong, right? So by default, like you said, right, it's a 3/7, it's a 3/2, 3/3 plus 2 minus 2, right? So it's by default like okay stats. And then like it has the Jeff tax, to a certain extent it can move. I think the reason why you would even consider playing this in the first place is that it has the inbuilt move thing, right? Like compared to Vulture, because Vulture is clearly the better card overall in terms of like power. But
Well,
this
Old
one can do it
Vulture,
by
but yeah.
yeah, oh voucher, yeah. But this one can do it like by itself. So I think that's a big plus point, right? It's just like a good mid-range like stat stick that you can use as, like you said, part of the backup plan with Craven Juggernaut, that kind of thing. Honestly, my issue with this card is a bit interesting. It probably doesn't happen often enough, but when it happens, you will feel it. Is that the second part of this effect is that it steals 2 power from the highest power enemy there, right? There is a chance that sometimes there is nothing there yet, but you need to like move it so that you can like move it back again, that kind of thing. There is just like one scenario that I think, because you're a bit reliant on your opponent having cards in the correct spots to have this card like maximize its full potential. So I think that's like a small thing that's like maybe holding this card back a bit. But overall, I think it's definitely a good card. Replacing Dagger, I think, is possible with this card. Overall, yeah, kind of a good card.
I don't like it. I think the reliance on your opponent being there is sort of similar with Dagger, right? But the
Mhm.
thing that makes me like this card more is that it has a higher floor because of what it is, because of its inbuilt move. I like, if I'm devoting a bunch of moves to Human Torch, I just need to put a couple of moves into this guy, and like my cloak will
Correct.
get this guy by accident, that kind of thing. I don't know if it'll replace Dagger or, like, say, replace Cloak because you have less of a need for those move cards like that. I can't be sure. There are a couple directions I can see the move deck going. I could understand if this guy doesn't necessarily make the cut over Dagger because the deck is currently really, really strong anyway. But I do think that that is the place where I am more likely to see him. This is a card that has 2 directions you can go with him. Direction number 1 is you just play him in a good stuff deck. Direction number 2 is you play him with his synergies. It's a reflection of where Marvel Snap is at right now, that I think it's so clearly going to be a card that is played for its synergies rather than
Mhm.
just being a 3/7.
Yeah, I think that point is like super important, right? Because in the past, just a 3/7 is decent stats, could be just like in any mid-range shell. But like this not, it's not gonna make the cut anymore. You really need to like maximize its output in the move deck. And I think it can maximize its output over there.
Next up is Superior Spider-Man, a 3/4 that every turn looks at your board and says, do you have a card that has gained power? So Angela, Adam Warlock, anything that's giving you green power on its own. Silver Sable, Nico Minoru some of the time. Those are the things that are going to turn Superior Spider-Man on when he's on. At the beginning of every turn, he checks. If you have one of those cards, he will give you an extra energy. That's an interesting card. When I look at it, I see a sort of Hope Summers-ish type card. And Hope Summers is not bad, but she's far from where she was. I mean, she came out, I don't know, 20 months ago. This is a card that has a relative competitor in the space that it's in the form of 3-4 energy gain. You need to be sure when you play a card like this that the payoff you're getting from it is being realized. You can't just be like, oh, I'll have extra energy and that will naturally make up for it. I feel like when you put this card in your deck, you need to be able to look at me and say, this is a card that I am using to do this specific thing that is allowing me to get the sort of points that I have taken off of my 3-drop back by having this extra energy. What is it that you're going to do with this card? When you're building a Superior Spider-Man deck, what 5 are you jumping to? Why is it so important that you get to a 5? What is it that you are doing to realize the gains of this card? Because you are realizing the losses, relatively speaking, every time you play this card instead of like a copycat or whatever. You are realizing the losses, relatively speaking, every time you make a deck building decision to get a card that is cheap, like the Hunger, so you can have your zombie hordes in there, right? That's the kind of thing where you're like, oh, okay, I can make a zombie version of this. Are you giving things up compared to playing Hope Summers? Is Hope Summers a better card for your zombie deck that is looking to trigger this card off of the zombie horde? For your Angela deck, that's the kind of stuff that you have to be like explicitly looking at when you deck build with a card like this, I think, at the highest levels. And the more I look at it, the less I come up with a way in which I am confident this guy is the A1 choice for his role.
I think essentially what you're saying is that this card really is a bit too much effort for an effect that was good about 20 months ago. Is something like that. Because I feel like the problem with this card is that right now you can't exactly deck build around green power the way you previously could, right? Like now it doesn't work that way anymore. And I don't think that like we said previously 3-7 was great. Now just playing a 3-4, you need to like reap the payoffs immediately, or like there's a consistent way to reap payoffs, right? There's like no consistent way to reap payoffs from playing a 3-4 with such a mediocre effect. So I personally don't think this will land very well as well.
Next up, one of the weirdest cards in the season. Man Spider is a 5/1 that merges with your previous card. Or I should say, your previous card merges into Man Spider. And it also has text that says, this card's power doubles whenever something merges with it. So that means that you can use other merge cards on it and get that power double as well. But what I think is the weirdest and most interesting thing about Man Spider is it doesn't have the word here on it. Wherever that other card was, your most recently played card, Man Spider will eat it. It will go to him. It's one of the weirdest cards I think they've ever done. Is that a typo? Did they mean that to be that way? Is that how he actually works? It just feels like every card that you would ever reasonably make with that text would say here on it, but Man Spider doesn't say here anywhere in his text. He just says merge. It just happens, which I assume means I play something on the left lane, I merge it into my right lane. Is that gag good enough? Like, is that actually just like, because like I was playing things that are like, you know, for a while I was doing like Think First Steps Ghost Spider stuff. This guy's just like that in reverse, right? Like you play your guy and then, woo, I've zoomed him across the other one. Like, is that good? Like, am I just totally underrating what this card is? Is that what its function is? Or am I just meant to try to like figure out how to make this guy Black Panther sized?
This card feels like you're trying to like force yourself to juke somebody, right? Like you play something there, then you play this in the other location, and then it just goes like zoop, that kind of thing. It's like a turn 6 card kind of thing or whatever it is. But like it's weird, right? It's such a weird card because firstly, I agree. Usually these kind of cards have the here text there just to like make it a bit more obvious. But I think maybe this is intended. Maybe it's meant to do like something unique that is not done in the previous like iterations of cards that have the merge text, you know. So, but honestly, I don't see this card being very strong. Like I just keep looking at this card and thinking like it's like symbiote Spider-Man-ish. It's like basically any other merge card. But the good merge cards usually cost a lot less, by the way, if you guys think about it. So this one is a bit too much investment for, I don't think, a very strong payoff, is where my head is at currently.
The best merge cards are cheaper because they can hit the things that pay you off for power more easily, right? Like the
Yes.
best merge card in Marvel Snap right now, I think, is pretty clearly Agony. And that's because it can hit Deadpool on like turn 2 and really
And
jumpstart your multiplicative scaling, right? That's the best merge cards that you can play. I think other than that, you look at something like Phoenix Force, right? That is hitting something that multiplies, whether that be, you know, Human Torch in the old decks or technically Cassandra Nova nowadays, some of the time where it's just like, I'm getting a doubled effect. I'm hitting multiple men. I'm doing things like that. Like I'm getting force multipliers off my merges. This guy comes down so late that it's hard to get a force multiplier off of him because of his cost. Even though he himself says, I am the multiplicative scaling, it might not be on time or in such a way that you can win multiple lanes with it. So I think this card is interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if there was something really cool and really fun to be done with him, just because he's got so much. There's just so much going on here that, like, I don't know. I can see it, right? Like, I can see this kind of thing actually happening. Like, especially
when you
if you
say
get
like Phoenix Force, I was like, when you said Phoenix Force, like, okay, maybe it's possible. But then the thing is, the Phoenix merges into this thing. It's like it gets eaten up by the spider, so it's no longer the Phoenix Force. So it's not exactly
yeah.
the powerhouse that it's supposed to be. So it doesn't work there. Okay, anyway, carry on. I was just thinking about like that.
No, this guy has so many weird interactions that I think that's sort of how people are going to think about it until someone figures out the interaction that actually makes the most sense with this guy. I'm willing to believe that there might be something out there for him. I just don't know what it is. Last of the new cards coming out on Tuesday, I believe this is Web Sling. Web Sling is a 1-cost skill that gives you the ability to move 1 card away next turn from the location that Web Sling is played on. That is sort of small Madam Web. My big worry with this card is largely related to the competition that it has. This is a card that when you look at 1-cost movers is to me worse than Ghost Spider, worse than Iron Fist, just by virtue of those cards working the turn they're played, which allows you to get a lot more out of them, especially in a world where you're bouncing your stuff like that. And then you end up comparing it to Aranya, which I think is a much more reasonable comparison, which is a 1-shot card. You can't really get a lot out of bouncing it. But Aranya does this while gaining power. And that's really important for Human Torch multiplicative scaling in much the same way as we talked about Agony being important for Deadpool multiplicative scaling. So when I look at those 3 cards and I look at Web Sling, I say those 3 cards are better. And the big move deck right now is not even playing Iron Fist, and I find it hard to believe it would play this. In a world where you're wanting to play all 4 of these, just like as many cheap move triggers as you can, I can believe that this would be a playable card in as much as it is a card that costs 1 and says move on it. But it is the worst of the 4 by a pretty significant margin, I think.
Yeah, so the thing about this card is that the one thing they got right and what they're actually trying to do with this card, like you said, they want to fit this into that like move many times deck, like there's something like a move bounce, right? That's why it's cheap and it can fit into like many curves and stuff like that. They want you to like fit it into like your combo. But my issue is also very similar to what you mentioned earlier, whereby the fact that this is actually a card. You know, if like this was generated by something else that just adds it to your hand, it's fine. But then the thing is, this contests with your like other 12 cards, right? And there's like a lot of all these combo style decks have a very tight like deck already. So like you don't have a space to play like just one of these like 1-cost Madam Web spell or something like that. I don't think it's very easy to fit this into even the most combo oriented decks, you know. But like I think it's possible. It's just that what are you cutting, you know? My real problem with this card is really the fact that it's actually a card, you know. If it was something that was generated from something that was already useful, then that's fine. But like playing a second Madam Web, which is obviously a worse Madam Web, I don't think cuts it.
I would play a second Madam Web. I just don't
Yeah,
think
like an actual Madam Web, yes. An actual Madam Web. But this is one-time usage. Cannot be played on turn 6 Madam Web or whatever you want to call it.
Review of Zombie Galacti could consist of several seconds of me making fart noises with my mouth. I won't do that out of respect for your ears, but that is roughly the takeaway. This is a card that is bad, and frankly, I would like to see continue to stay bad. I don't want to play against the good version of this card. Like, I just don't think that there's any. This is such a weird card because I'm really glad that it's bad because I hate the idea of it ever being good so much, which just makes me wonder, like, is this even like a fruitful direction for a card to be in? It's almost like they were like, what if we made Hela 2? And then they were like, okay, but like that's really broken. So what if we made a properly balanced Hela 2? And you know how Hela is either like the best deck in the game or like wildly unplayable? That's kind of what this card is, where it's like the dynamics feel like they're exactly the same. And so like you could compare it to Hela, or you could compare it to like Cerebro. But what I don't think it compares to is like something like, I don't know, Living Tribunal or Mr. Negative or things like that, because those are really powerful outputs that are counterbalanced by like your opponent having the ability to put a card in your deck that interacts with you. There's not really a card that goes in any deck that interacts with Zombie Galacti. So if it's good, it just wins. And if it's bad, that's good because you don't want a deck that just wins with no interaction possible for it, right? That's the thing that strikes me about this card. It's really bad. And I feel like it has to be really bad because the axis it operates on is totally non-interactable. If this card was ever playable, you could do nothing about it. It would just happen to you. And then you'd have to just like do more points than it. And that's it. The game would become actually just war. It would just be, do you have more points than me or nothing?
I mean, they just haven't printed the floodgate that lets you play this card yet if it was good. I mean, like, I don't know what that floodgate is, but like, I agree with the fact that this card is probably just meant to be bad. Like, it's meant to be printed to be a meme. And I think it's okay to have cards like that. What other cards are printed to be memes? Actually, none, right? There's every single card that was like bad at one point in time is like somehow playable. Like even Howard the Duck, I think the card is like pointless to me most of the time. But Howard has seen play, right? Howard the Duck has seen play. Like this card is just bad.
I don't know.
But I think
Howard
it's
the
just
Duck
meant to
has
be bad.
seen play, but it has never been the correct decision.
Okay, that I agree because I never thought the card was ever good.
Yeah,
But
like-
no, but the thing is, like that card can see play and like it's fine. This card cannot reasonably be allowed to be good, right? Like it's a bit different. At least Howard the Duck can be a bad decision that doesn't punish you that much. I think if you build around this zombie galacti, this galacti and try and make a deck, it's just meant to fail right now, which I guess is the purpose of the card.
Moving on to Mercury, who is now a 3/4. There are two sort of angles I want to point out here, and you can take either one of these and run with it. Angle number one, Move is already the best deck probably in the game at high levels. Just probably is, right? Like it's quite strong, it's quite powerful, it's quite good. Angle number two is that is not, or I should say, continuation of angle number one, it's not true at lower levels. It just is not true at lower levels, and so they feel comfortable nerfing a counter card to an extremely powerful deck because that deck is only good at the highest levels of play, which is like the 0.01%, basically. I don't think Move is a good deck to play for anyone who is not in that cohort. The second angle is this season has a couple of move cards in it. And I've seen people speculating that they're pre-nerfing Mercury so that people are able to like play more Spider-Punk or something like that. Either one of those angles that you want to take and give your thoughts on, I will just offer them up to you as a sacrifice. Here you go.
So my personal opinion on this topic, and I think I've known this for a while already, is that like Marvel Snap is not really balanced for the higher end players. Like it's really not, is my opinion. So I think it's the second one whereby they are trying to let you play with their new move cards. Like the literal theme of the whole like next season pass is move stuff, right? So I feel like they really just want you to be able to like feel less pain from like buying and playing with these new move cards, Spider-Punk, for example. So I think it's mainly more that, less of like balancing for the top end. But like, how should I put it? Nerfing Mercury actually kind of just makes it harder to reach the top without playing move, right? If you think about it, right? Because you kind of want to play move if you're at that level. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of weird.
I personally think it doesn't make it all that much harder. because I mean, Move is a great deck, but it's also a deck that is like, and this is something that's been bothering me a lot, right? There are decks that are really good, but whether or not your opponent is snapping you is dependent entirely on their draw. And Move is one of those
Correct.
decks where it's like, if they're doing their thing, it's only held back by its own relative inconsistency. And what makes it the best deck to me is actually just the fact that it gets to be a Juggernaut Cosmo deck when it's not giant human torching you, right? Like when it's not doing its, what's in the box gameplay of like, where's my power? Ha 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 ha. I've got Heimdall and Hellion. Guess where your tech cards are going. When it's not doing all of that, it still gets to play like a 5/8 Hellion and then Juggernaut and have some Cravens and have some Scalers. And that's actually the bit that I think Spider-Punk fits into, is like those kind of games where it's just like I'm doing my relatively smaller ball stuff. So like the thing about Move to me is like it just sort of so consistently accesses the floor of being a goodish mid-range deck and has access to the ceiling of the world's largest Human Torch. And I think that Mercury is less good against it than people think that it is.
Okay.
And it's also just like, it to me, you could still be a Mercury Shadow King deck if you want to be, but I think Shadow King covers a lot of it. Just being Shadow King, right? I don't know that nerfing Mercury is a bigger deal than nerfing Shadow King. And the fact that zombies are so popular right now brought Shadow King into so many more decks that there are now more decks that are incidentally pretty okay against Move. Now, granted, because Move is what it is and it gets to be a Cosmo Juggernaut deck, it's not as good as you think. But I don't really feel like it's like this overpowering, ridiculous thing. It's only going to be that maybe in Golden Gauntlet.
Actually, the point you brought up made me remember something that I wanted to talk about, which is because okay, so basically in the life of Marvel Snap, there's been like a lot of like tier 1 or best decks, right, in different metas and everything. This particular move deck is the closest to what I like to call like the tier 0.5, which is like, how should I put it? Good players pilot it better. It's like far better than every other deck in the game in terms of like just doing the average thing. But when it high rolls, right, it's just unbeatable, right? It can run floodgates. It has like average power level that's above other decks. And then when it sky rolls, it's above every other deck. So this is like the recipe of like the tier 0.5 tier S deck. I think this is like one of them. And obviously making the Mercury nerf will improve that deck's chances of being the tier S deck. So might be a bit toxic in the future if everyone just has to play this deck to like do well. Like if everyone is not playing this deck, you're like shortchanging yourself. I'm afraid that it might come to that point.
There is an OTA this week on Thursday, a week after the previous OTA. There are some scheduling things happening at Second Dinner, clearly. And I'm sort of interested because I don't really feel like there's anything wrong. Right? When I look at OTAs, a lot of the ways I think of OTAs is like, A, they're fixing outliers, and B, they're making things that were not strong, right? And I think that right now, there's really not a lot that I would do in terms of like, if you look at who OTAs are aimed at, like outside of balancing for the top 1%, right? The Golden Gauntlets, which we'll talk about in the next topic. I don't really know that there are any massive outliers. Like there's stuff that I'd be like, all right, yeah, you should probably do this, but maybe now's not the right time. Like, I think it's probably reasonable to nerf Move, but you probably don't need to do that because it's not reasonable to do that outside of the top 1% or whatever. I think you could look at taking points of power off of cards like Merlin or Werewolf by Night, like or maybe even the zombie package a little bit, Zombie Giant Man, tone him down by a point of power, something like that. Like, there's stuff I think you can do. You can look at the sort of Sauron package, which you took points off already, but I think that deck is still quite ridiculous. There's a lot of decks that I think are like pretty good, but I don't think any of them are like crying out for a nerf right now. So I guess my question is like, are there any cards that really stick out to you as like, this card is fun and I wish they would make it stronger? Because that's the kind of thing that I would like to see out of this OTA. I don't think there are like pressing problems to solve in the metagame right now.
Well, I guess yes, there's not much to solve in the meta game right now. Until move becomes like
Yeah.
the popular deck even at lower
Yeah.
tiers, right? And everyone starts to play move, even playing it barely, but they are playing it, and then
It's in
second
the
data has to do
Loki
something about
space
it.
right now, yeah. Where it's just like
Is it like is it like in that exact Loki space yet, or is it like there's still a bit more time?
I think it might be better for what it's worth than Loki was. But I
Okay.
also think it has the same level of just like, if you're not good at the game and you're not like reading your opponent in a meaningful way, like if you're playing this game PvE, so to speak, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think you can play the deck.
Okay,
Like
okay, okay.
it's
So it's the fact that it's already in that space means I actually can see this deck getting nerfs this exact OTA. The fact that it's already in that space, because like when you brought up the Loki thing, I recollected on my time being that Loki guy for like a few months, and I was like, it really actually felt the same way back then as well. Like if you're not playing Loki and you don't have like the ability to pilot this deck as well as some of the other players, you just couldn't compete. So if move is currently already in this space, then I can see maybe some of the move stuff taking a bit of a hit, right? And I mean, obviously, if that's the case, then it paves way for some of the new move cards, maybe like Spider Punk, to be slotted in, and maybe that's the plan. Maybe that's the plan, because I also do agree that like look at the other decks that are playable, like the zombie horde stuff. While not being the best deck, it's also like pretty fun and pretty like decent, right?
yeah.
There's like the cerebro stuff that's also a good deck. It's playable, that kind of thing. Like I don't like it, but it's playable. So like I mean, then destroy is an okay deck as well. So like I feel like there's like so many playable decks. Then there is the tier S. I call it tier S deck, which is move. So I feel like if you have to play move to actually compete in like the meta right now already, maybe move will be a deck that gets hit a little bit.
Actually, thanks for reminding me about Cerebro. I want them to take a hammer to that card. I do
Because
not
you
enjoy.
think it's giving too much power to
It's just not
simple
a.
gameplay, or
It's no. I don't have any bias against simple gameplay. I love simple gameplay.
okay,
My favorite thing in
okay,
the world is playing a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, and a 6. I love doing
okay,
that. I love playing PvE when I can. What I don't like about Cerebro is that you can't do anything about it. Like that's
ah,
largely the issue that I have with Cerebro. That issue I have with Cerebro is very similar to the issue I used to have with Hella. Hella, a little bit less ability to interact, but we got Stardust and now it's fine. I don't have to worry about Hella anymore. If I want to beat it, I can go make that decision, right? There's just not a card that allows me to do that for Cerebro. I guess the card is technically Red Skull, but even that is just like not a card that a deck can afford to play, right? Unless you are already a Sauron deck. And then in a closed bracket, in an open deckless tournament, you will instantly win every Cerebro matchup because you just won't play your Sauron. You have the Red Skull, you know all that, right? But on ladder, that's
mhm,
not a meaningful way to interact with people. And I think Cerebro's biggest issue to me is that all of its power comes from hand, final turn of the game, and you don't really have the ability to do anything about it. It's just like, do they have Cerebro Mystique? If they do, you lose. And that is not great. That dynamic specifically is something that bothers me. I think that specific dynamic is the issue that I have with it. It's not like, oh, this deck is too easy. Oh, I'm losing to someone who's easy. Oh, they're bad and they're beating me. No, I think that's awesome. If you're a bad player and you beat me with a bad deck, that's just the kind of thing that has to happen in a game for it to be interesting. Like that's
okay.
fine. If I couldn't do anything about it, if there was no deck building decision I could have reasonably made to change the outcome of that game, that's when it starts to bother me.
Yeah, I think Cerebro, like, don't worry, I'm not gonna defend this. Like, I would love to see Cerebro just like nuked into oblivion. Like, you guys know that I don't like this deck, but yeah, I really feel like that's one of the biggest points, right? Like, Cerebro's power level right now is just it's actually so high, that how should I put it? Like you mentioned earlier the whole Hela. It feels a bit Hela-ish, right? I think that's exactly the feels bad feeling that you get when you play against Cerebro right now, because like they just hold like the cards in hand, and then on the final turn they just dump it, and then you're just like, okay, it's done. Like there's literally nothing you can do about it. So yeah, it really has that really feels bad factor. So yeah, new kit, I'm down.
Now, there is one additional wrinkle to this OTA, and that it comes out 2 days before the Golden Gauntlet World Championship. And I want to say it's probably like 14 to 24 to 36 hours before deck lists are due. which is a really short amount of time to wrangle an OTA and get your deck lists in. I will say, I think that this is a really interesting situation for a lot of the competitors. As someone who's competed in high level tournaments before, what is it that you see when you think, what is it that you think of when you see there's going to be a potential balance change? Not even to mention the fact that like 4 new cards came out on Tuesday. There's a potential balance change on Thursday. The tournament's on Saturday. So where is your head at during this?
Well, so ideally, you don't want too much change before like a major event, right? Because you want to have time to prep and you want to have time to practice and all that kind of thing. So like the funny thing is I say this is ideal, but I also like the fact that there's like surprise speed bumps before a tournament because as a pro player, personally, I'm someone that innovates quickly and also like plays and tests a lot before an event. So within whatever window you give me, I will personally go and like try my best to figure things out and try and find an edge in this like unsuspecting like unknown field of play of like new meta or whatever you want to call it, so like that's something that I will try to do, but obviously it requires putting in the effort. So I would say that the people that benefit the most from like this short window between the list submission and the OTA is the people that like I said, right, that play and test a lot. Like, so it's not really every single like try hard player. It's like the try hard player that actually innovates and invests time in like learning all the new interactions and experimenting, because we all know that there are some players that are just better at like piloting, some players that are better at innovating and also piloting. So I feel like with this kind of like OTA into tournament thing, you need to be a good innovator, pilot, and also in general, you need to have been playing the game this whole time, because if you've been practicing all the way, like all these subtle changes, like you can eliminate the noise a lot quicker, right? If you're just very like in tune with the game, like the moment you see the changes, you know that okay, this is gonna make X deck bad, this is gonna make X deck better, that kind of thing. Like you eliminate all the noise a lot quicker if you've been like in touch with the game. So I feel like this tournament this OTA might, I mean, if it does a lot for the for like to shake up the meta and everything, this OTA is probably gonna be like where you see like the best players that know how to innovate and play well, like shine in the Golden Gauntlet. So it's gonna be interesting.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching and listening. As always, you can catch this podcast on YouTube here and on Spotify. Thanks so much. I've been KMBest. He's been Lambie Series, and he's about to take us out.
All right, guys. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.